at Bitcoin, it's at a key level and attempting to break out as well. So you have resistance on both BTC and coin, and it's relatively strong compared to the market. I want to give it a bit of a chance. I'm out of Snapchat. I'm taking long trades that weren't part of the original plan and I have tight stops on. It broke the 14. I grabbed the 2. It did not sustain the break. There wasn't a whole lot of buying above the 14 level. There was some, but immediately met some resistance. So I was out for a 4-cent hit. And as far as a firm goes, probably got out of it too early. It just wicked the you-know-what out of 36 even. So it got to 36.03, slammed right back in. I still think this is a strong stock, but I do not like breakouts at this time of day, generally speaking, when something has been this parabolic. If it's breaking a new high, fine, but if it's breaking a parabolic one at like 10:45, I'm not punching that top. The dip buy has been the way to go. It's stair-stepping it into the upside. Still not a chance to get back into Meta, nor Tesla. I think Tesla's kind of like I thought, I came in, the first thing I looked at was Pfizer. Second thing I was looking at was, okay, actually, I was actually looking at Snapchat. UiPath was kind of the third thing we looked at, and it was Tesla. And I've not made a single trade on Tesla. I don't think I want to force it. I still like maybe a chance of the 35, but I'm seeing some signs of strength in the market, and Tesla never broke the low. I keep coming back into that. The one thing in EV land that I know has been strong is Rivian. I feel like this Rivian is probably the trade for me, not Tesla. Because Rivian is in a clear upward trend since the open. Market strong. Tesla, I still don't know what to make of it. And Rivian is short time. Cycle long. I'll just go back to Rivian. This looks like it makes a heck of a lot more sense.
Roughly $4 in the money, but now I've adjusted the stop. So the race to 373. We've already taken out this very small average. Average, and now you're starting to get back above 373. So if we break above that level, I'm honestly highs up. I'll take this and then rework it, right? Try to find the next one, onto the next, onto the next. And if we can find that, then great. Because part of the problem that I'm realizing now is that, like I'm already biased to the short side, so I'm really not looking for any long opportunities because I'm sitting in these 2 shorts. And by the way, like Pfizer was really great reload there, man. And this is what I'm talking about, like. Right into there, then get out on the 200 and break through and get some 95s. Now maybe if we can get back into the 80s, that's where I'm bidding again next. I'm actually bidding 78. Actually, I have too many shares. I got to replace that right now at 78 because I don't want to get flat or still. Down there. So now we'll wait. We only do have about 20% left of this position now, as we talked about what the plan of action was on that one. Tesla AMD. So AMD just went up and down. Yeah, so AMD is right near VWAP again. And I said don't trade scared, but really, AMD is down. Okay, so it's just at VWAP right now. This is again another pretty good opportunity potentially to make that short. We did just wick above it though, right there on AMD. That got to 180, so it's not even that bad. I think this is going to be another opportunity. I'd like to get out of my Microsoft first. Before I take a short here on AMD, because the thing is, if Microsoft rips up, well, Microsoft right now just takes 50 cents. I feel like that's something you might think about. But this is something else. If you're not in position, or if this isn't looking so bad to you, you have a short period here at 120. You got VWAP right here as well. This is a decent short, I feel like, anyways. But I want to see Microsoft sort of settle down. Which is trying to get going one more time short as it bounces off of that level that we're looking at, 373. So, all right, we can do a starter position here on AMD now that I realize we don't have some 119.80. So let's see if we can get a pop up about 20 cents to initiate short here against the 200 and against the walk for advanced micro device.
Glad you just said AMD, because it made me pull up my Intel chart, and Intel just bounced. I had this line on the chart. I have to zoom out so you can see why. Okay, it's gonna load up eventually. So anyway, 43.30 has been a big level on Intel. There you go. Now you can kind of see it. It's been a big support level the last 2 weeks. You broke this down, and then lo and behold, when you said AMD, I pull up Intel. It just quit that previous support level on the 15-minute chart and got back underneath. I grabbed 19, trying to add above 20. This if it stair steps down, when support holds, breaks, and turns into resistance, it is one of the most simplistic setups that you can do because it's easy to spot the chart. I think it's a big level, and it's not a big level, and then it's a big level in the other direction. Right? So that's the idea behind it. Doesn't mean it has to turn into resistance, but it does mean that you're looking for it. And when it does, in the intel for that reason. Tesla, thank you very much. Glenn Smith, Michael Jacob, all mentioning that Tesla finally pulled back into that 235 level. Very quick. I was getting into Intel, and in some ways I kind of like that setup on Intel better because Intel's been stair-stepping down underneath VWAP and it's weaker, so if you're shorting it, it's actually a weaker name. But Tesla is rightfully at that level at 235. So I prioritize getting into Intel because I think it's a better setup, but if I can still grab Tesla with a reasonable entry, I'll be a little bit late, but you know what? I think it's a better trade to the short side, at least technically, because Tesla's still making higher lows. So I'll scalp it off 235 if I can. I want to check back in on Firm because, oh no, a Firm is not nearly as strong as it was before. Now that's showing signs of weakness. UiPath, which has been flying, that's still looking pretty strong up here. Firm just broke a second level to the downside, whereas UiPath is still consolidating off that top. So Path looks strong. I just grabbed Tesla, got a 75 price, which I thought was a heck of a lot better than getting 50 other in Tesla. The new position was not a reload, but an entry for the first time into Intel today, actually in a couple of days, and then into Tesla, which is still looking relatively strong. Well, if I'm going long, I still favor Rivian and Tesla. Like, even if I lose on Tesla, I'm favoring my long in Rivian, which I'm trying to grab a tip 5. Long in Tesla, at least for now.
Shout out, yeah, I like Tesla up there. Shout out to Nimit, my good friend there in the chat from Singapore. He brought some great gifts. I have one left over right here. And the thing is, Nimit, you picked the wrong day, my friend, to go drinking with friends because I had honestly the best morning I've had, and I've only traded 2 names, so I know your style. I mean, you like to trade some of the bigger movers and things like that, but this Pfizer was a monster, and then Microsoft Nimit, I know you're checking this thing, you know, this is a monster trade to the short side, as you can see what we have on, but thank you so much for the love. As it's 10.50 coming through right now in this market, look at what Microsoft's doing. It's now $3 in the money. We just talked about 373 coming back into play again, and there it goes. It's Tank City right now. And by the way, remember we just talked about AMD, and I said like where a potential situation would have been to short it was up there. We didn't want to take 60s. It's only down 10 cents as this market tries to figure itself out. I want to short the pops. And then what's up to Frosty in the chat? Keeps on pinging me to see, am I going to hold through Powell's speech? The answer is no. I've already talked about, well, I mean, sorry. I have my stop orders out. So if they break during Powell's speech, then I will get out. But I'm not scared of what he's going to say, but I'm aware of it. So as we sit here in positions, I'm not taking anything crazy, but I'm also not pulling my offer on AMD. If it rips up, I'm still going to trade technically and put on that CMT hat that we keep talking about, because the more I talk to those guys, they don't give, whatever about that. And that was something else from Arun. He's like, I don't care what stories are coming up. He puts his orders there, gets run over if it happens. And
well, my issue with that is
I have lots of issues with it.
I have my only issue with that. You trade off the technicals from an execution standpoint. It matters. We were talking about because the economic number at 10 o'clock cost me a fill in Meta because I wasn't thinking about the number coming out. Right? So because when the bids drop and the ads drop and you're trying to get into position, well, suddenly I think I'm punching into Meta and I'm missing by 25 cents because it was 10 o'clock. So to me, that matters. Liquidity is going to be different around those things, those times. We're going to go right over to Money Talk with Adair in a second, but Uber is at 57 and up 1%. Is a strong aim. I see the buyers start to come in above 57 even. I want to look long. Not a breakout long, but I want to join if there's buyers above 57. Now let's go to the desk of Money Talk.
Let's just start here with the Euro to USD relationship. Down for the 3rd day in a row. We did just earlier today have some comments from the Bank of France governor basically saying that the European Central Bank would be looking to lower inflation and interest rates by 2024, so keep an eye out for that. In terms of the DXY itself, we are strong, continuing to the upside. A lot of economic data today, including ISM manufacturing prices and PMI. ISM manufacturing prices a little bit higher than the estimate, 49.9 versus 46.2. The PMI was a little bit lower, so 46.7 versus the expected 47.6. We also have Fed Chair Powell coming on to speak in less than 10 minutes, and also he's going to speak again at 2 p.m. We had Fed Schoolsby earlier today, so lots of economic data and speeches to keep an eye on with regards to the TXY, guys.
Uber, we're just sort of talking about Uber. I mean, it could be an announcement any day now that Uber is getting added to the S&P 500. It's not that it would be added to it today, like there's a whole process, but then a lot of people have to buy it once it gets added. Like that's the mechanics of the move. Just keep a couple things in mind. Some of that's priced in. You think some of that's priced in on Uber? Some of that is priced in the same way some of that's priced in for Palantir. So if on the day the announcement happens, there's a bit of a pullback as people sell the news, I wouldn't be shocked, but I'm generally bullish on this thing. So it's above 57 now. It's not exactly tearing through this 57. So I'm just gonna
coming up in 5 minutes.
33 on Tesla. It just bounced off VWAP and is showing me some strength in there. I don't even know if I'm going to get the dip on Rivian the way these are going. Look at Rivian just hold the high. This is really strong today. You know what? Maybe they're not as optimistic about the, I'm just making stuff up, the Cybertruck taking away from Rivian. But it's up 3% and looking really good. The coil on Rivian's isn't looking bad on the daily. I'm starting to think if this gets back above the 50 and the 200 at the same time, this is a really good swing entry, or just a buy in the long term. Scratch that. Maybe I buy it in the long term. I'm thinking out loud here, guys. With Rivian, I like the long here if it can take out this top. It just has to get there.
All right. SQM. What is that?
SQM.
And I think someone was saying in the chat. I don't know what that stock is. Sociedad? Mineral Chile ADR? I don't know, this must be SQ. I just want to bring it up. Someone just mentioned it in the chat. I never heard of it. Right there. So SQM, there it is right here. I don't know what this stock is.
That's got to be like a Brazilian stock.
Yeah, it is. It's a Chilean stock. Okay, we just did take our first short there in AMD, but look what's happening to Microsoft, guys. Absolutely getting kicked. All right, time to change our stop again on this name. This has been, it's literally beating a dead horse. I understand that, but I don't know what else to do now because this is been beaten up by me pretty good today. 372.50 new stop. I just keep changing it. I'm not using a trailing stop because I have no idea how far this thing's going to go down, and I don't want to trail it. I just want this thing to keep on going. So that's that trade right there. Pfizer is now obviously an absolute banger as we'll fire off the hot dog gun. But if you're like, man, this guy's fighting, I'm gonna take another bid here on Pfizer. I get it. This guy's fighting off the hot dog gun. Maybe that means hot dogs are pork. So you want to wondering maybe what's for lunch. All right. So my favorite segment today has been Money Talks because I want to know what's going on with the dollar and try to convert some of these USDs into CAD, right? But today, Monday it was chicken, Tuesday it was chicken, Wednesday it was chicken, Thursday chicken. So you would say, hey, maybe today you're going to get another chicken dinner winner. You're getting a chicken dinner winner once again today.
Psych. We actually got it yesterday. So.
It is creamy chicken and broccoli with French thyme and buttered shells. So you're gonna get a little pasta, so that's gonna save the day, but you get creamy chicken and broccoli. I think it has a chance to be okay. I'll be on that salad and praying for tuna or egg salad chicken and probably stealing some of that. So anyways, that is that, and it is another one, and that is been barbecued up. Although last night we had burgers in my house. My kid went again another 2-0 in chess, IRL. So that was really nice. And then tonight is a game. We have a game up in Leaside, so that should be real fun. My wife's asking me what's going to be for dinner, so we're going to have to figure that one out as the game is at 7, I believe, but because she plays rep, she got to get there an hour before for dry land, so that's 6, and thank God it's not my podcast tonight, or else I would not be able to attend the event. So I'm happy, I'm excited. Lots of good ideas this weekend, but you can join Neil and I back at 2 o'clock. We're going to go at 11 over to these guys, Adara and Sharif, for the midday Learn to Trade, and then we'll be back, and then there'll be a podcast which will be released Saturday. Do we do 10 a.m.? Is there a specific?
It's 9:30.
9:30. So get ready to be able to watch that on all of your
Market's
podcast
bouncing here.
stations.
So a bit of a bounce happening in this market, but I want, before we get out of here, shout out to everyone mentioning two things. A, Elon, you're right about Dell ripping, but C3AI does not have a red candle today on the 15th. This is super strong. Brendan didn't see anything. I didn't see anything news-wise when it comes to C3AI, but I'm just going to point out, if this makes it to 32, that has been a huge level, huge with a capital H, in terms of just simply rejecting everything above 31 even. So this has been a big runner. Tesla bounced off VWAP.
Walmart bouncing a bit here. Off the lows now. Whiskey Michael Tango.
So my plan of action is to simply short in front of that previous support level. Hopefully we find some and join the trend.
Powell said recent inflation declines are welcome but must continue. Risks of increasing too much or too little becoming more balanced. Interest rate hikes are probably over, but officials are reluctant to say so. Fed has made considerable progress lowering inflation, welcomes recent softening in data, Fed funds rate well into restrictive territory. Says premature to say monetary policy is restrictive enough. Walmart shares continuing to bounce here. S&P futures are moving higher now after initially dipping.
Bloomberg lately, and that's what moved them over to the expulsion column here, because they thought, gosh, now we have the goods. It's not about due process. It's all here. But if you're a member of Congress and you're worried about your past coming back to haunt you, maybe you thought twice today.
Exactly. All right, Michael, down on the floor here, I'm just wondering, I mean, is this a win for the Democrats? Is this just not a big deal? I mean, I'm trying to put this into context here.
Well, if they are able to somehow prevail in the special election early next year, this would give them a toehold on this seat, which they lost the last time around, and they will want to be able to not only hold that, but use it. And New York State, the New York delegation really wanted to make sure that Santos was expelled. They really regretted, after all the allegations against him came to light, having ever put him on the ballot, and they really wanted to make sure the party was somehow held accountable to that, the Republicans, that is. And now Democrats are going to try to be able to ride this momentum, not only hold on to this seat, but continue to use this in other campaigns elsewhere to say, hey, look, this is the party
S&P
that brought you George
futures now
Santos.
moving higher, 45.
Guess what? Maybe trying to bring Donald Trump back to office too.
Trading
Joe,
just
have
about
we
flat
heard
now,
from anything from the White House on this, or they
following
just
the Powell comment.
Oh no, that's all for you guys to work out. I don't think Karine Jean-Pierre minds being asked about it, but she loves deferring to the Republican conference in the House. He's got a black overcoat over his shoulders, shaking people's hands on the way out. Might be the last time he's there. Michael Shepard probably knows more about this than I do. As a former member, Michael, don't we understand he'll still have some privileges and could in fact return to the House?
Republicans from New York are ready to unseat scandal-ridden Congressman George Santos.
The representative is being accused of identity theft.
Wire fraud, false statements, falsification of records.
Scamming a disabled veteran out of money he was raising for his sick dog.
Now it's not reports that he once performed as a drag queen in Brazil.
I never claimed to be Jewish. I said I was Jew-ish. Claiming, for instance, he had a role in Hannah Montana.
I'm just struck, not necessarily that a politician would lie, but that you would think no one would find out.
Well, I ran in 2020 for the same exact seat, and I got away with it then.
There's an old saying I find hard to disagree with. Politics is just show business for ugly people.
No, get those lights off! Off!
Nancy Pelosi's gazpacho police.
They're too bright. Turn them off! Freedom! Turn off the lights! Turn off the lights!
Through a cynical lens, American politics can be seen as a deranged spectacle for the entire world to laugh at.
The next time you get in trouble, call on crackhead.
Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud.
HMC Honda,
To stop these
DK
terrorist
reporting
killers.
Honda, Axis 500.
A never-ending source of entertainment that favors vapid theatrics over any actual substance.
Market shift
How many
to
AR-15s do you
EVs.
think Jesus would have had? Well, he didn't have enough.
if I said it wasn't funny. If our country's going to hell, we might as well enjoy the ride there.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word.
But I don't think there's a single politician today who epitomizes our government's absurdity quite like George Anthony DeValder Santos.
Is it true that you have an OnlyFans page and you can peel a banana with your feet?
I just discovered what OnlyFans was about 3 weeks ago. I was oblivious to the whole concept.
All right, so
You may have heard his name before or seen his picture on the news, and well, that would be because George has become one of the most polarizing individuals in all of Congress, but that's not for any traditional reason. He was elected on a number of false pretenses. And I know your response to that may be, doesn't every politician lie, though? To which I would say yes, but also you've never heard of George Santos. This guy's entire existence is made up. He's lived about 1 million different lives, and as a result, has put himself in the crosshairs of the FBI, the FEC, the GOP, the Brazilian government, the House Ethics Committee, and to the nearly 1 million constituents who make up his district, just to name a few. I mean, he's facing 23 federal charges as we speak, and there's no guarantee he won't be charged with even more after this video comes out. Because when we look into his actual biography, we discover a man who has scammed, thieved, and manipulated his way to the top in a manner so unbelievable, he's had to escape entire countries. I mean, we're talking about an entirely different brand of criminal. He's like a Looney Tune, a Grinch-like figure, as some have suggested.
George Santos just left Tim Burchett's office with a baby in his arms. When asked if it was his baby, he said, "Not yet."
But before we get to anything he did, it's important to establish somewhat of a base understanding of where the man comes from, which I'm going to attempt to lay out as best I can, but keep in mind, this guy has lied about literally so many elements of his life that it's actually hard to get a straightforward timeline of events. So if anything here feels a bit disjointed, it's because George himself is a very disjointed and confusing person, okay? Not my fault. This is a guy who baselessly claimed his niece was kidnapped by Chinese communists, that he survived multiple assassination attempts, and that he's run a real estate empire on top of meeting Jeffrey Epstein. He's also lied about where he went to school, where he worked, where he got his money, that he was an actor on Disney Channel, and one of my favorites, that he produced a Spider-Man musical on Broadway, which is especially bizarre to me because that specific musical he wrongly said he worked on was a commercial failure that lost millions of dollars and even resulted in the injury of several cast members. Why you would want to tie your name to that, I just don't get. Half the time there's nothing to be gained from these lies at all. In a 2022 congressional debate, he actually stole his opponent's answer to the question, what's your favorite holiday tradition, right in front of it.
So Mr. Zimmerman, name one of your favorite family traditions.
New Year's Eve, my nephews and I, my brother and sister-in-law, get together in our sweats, watch a stupid holiday movie, some sort of stupid comical holiday movie, and eat the food that we shouldn't eat all year round. Haagen-Dazs is always a staple.
Mr. Santos, your favorite family tradition.
Our favorite family tradition is just family time. It doesn't matter if it's a Tuesday night or if it's a Sunday night or if it's Christmas. It's sweatpants, pints of Haagen-Dazs all over the place.
He literally copied bro's own family tradition right down to the brand of ice cream. This man's a fucking menace. But where does it all begin, right? Well, even that's the subject of debate. As the story goes, George Santos was brought into the world on July 22nd, 1988 in Sunnyside, Queens, and was raised in a basement apartment in Jackson Heights. And if we're going off this Wikipedia biography for a user named Anthony DeValder, last edited by him in 2011, we would learn his drag career began at 17, winning several gay beauty pageants between making the rounds at Brazilian nightclubs before going into acting on various Disney Channel shows, and landing a role in the 2009 film The Invasion starring Uma Thurman, a movie that doesn't exist, all because he was inspired by the Steven Spielberg film Independence Day, which Spielberg didn't make. So this biography doesn't actually clear anything up, unfortunately. In that case, what do other people tell us about George? Well, as his former co-worker Barbara Hurtis told Patch.com, he used to tell us he was born in Brazil and that he would travel back and forth and that he came from money, which we know for a fact that George had lied about coming from money. What's telling a judge he worked for Goldman Sachs in 2017. The reason he was in court, by the way, was so he could testify on behalf of a family friend who ended up pleading guilty to ATM skimming and later told the feds that it was George who taught him how to do it. But that's a different story entirely. The transcript here is asks, "You worked for Goldman Sachs in New York?" George's response was just, "Yup," which in hindsight was a bold-faced lie, one of many that he'd actually copped to once he realized there was nowhere else to run. Before beginning his political career, or any career for that matter, we know George was living near Rio de Janeiro with his mother in 2008, or he may have been living in the US and visiting his mom in Brazil, as some of his friends have now stated, but that's a detail. The point is, he was around 20 at the time he stole the checkbook of a man his mother had been caring for and used it to rack up around $1,300 in fraudulent checks, according to Brazilian court documents. To make matters worse, this elderly patient his mom had been working as a caregiver for was deceased at the time George took his checkbook and forged his signature in order to buy luxury clothes for his boyfriend. And despite him insisting he's committed no crimes in America or abroad, Brazilian police records indicate a different story. That George actually confessed to the crime over a decade ago, not just pleading with the store owner through a Brazilian social media platform, but eventually appearing in front of authorities in 2010 and admitting to the fraud alongside his mother. Also telling him he was a white professor, according to police documents. And I think one of the wildest discoveries I made while researching this video is the fact that his lawyer for this was reportedly convicted for his connection to a gang-related murder and was defending George while on house arrest. That is just something you can't even make up. As far as the store owner goes, he recalls having to pay for the stolen items out of his own pocket at the time, recently telling Mother Jones how visibly deceitful George came across. Now, George didn't acknowledge the fraudulent checks again until this year when he agreed to a $5,000 settlement and a confession in exchange for avoiding prosecution. The reason he just now settled this thing is because when Brazilian police tried to subpoena him originally in 2011, George was mysteriously nowhere to be found. He wasn't with his mom, and it turns out he wasn't even in the country because, I guess, for whatever reason, George decided to leave Brazil behind and make a new name for himself in the land of opportunity. Just like Connor Roy, I don't doubt George Santos was interested in politics from a very young age, but he didn't become very vocal about them until 2019, giving his take on the hot-button issues of the day on Facebook, along with schmoozing Republicans at various events and fundraisers.
Today was a day for me as a patriot to come down here to Mar-a-Lago.
In these early days before he was really established, George made appearances in Mar-a-Lago, donated tens of thousands to the New York Republican Club, and attended CPAC, where he likely caught COVID at the very start of the pandemic in March 2020. This, to my knowledge, is the first time anyone in the media had even uttered the name George Santos on live television.
Our next guest tested positive for COVID-19 and joins us via Skype in quarantine. Welcome New York congressional candidate George Santos. George, great to see you. How are you feeling right now?
I'm in recovery. And it was also shortly after he launched his first congressional campaign, running for the U.S. House of Representatives in New York's 3rd congressional district. George was going up against the incumbent Democrat Thomas Suave, who ended up taking the win by a surprisingly narrow margin.
2 weeks after the election day, Democrat Tom Suozzi has won re-election representing New York's 3rd congressional district. Suozzi had 53%, Republican challenger George Santos 47%.
Traditionally speaking, the Nassau County Republican Committee would otherwise be pretty strict about letting a newcomer into the fold with such minimal political experience. But the thing that made dissuading anyone else from running, coupled with the fact that the county had moved more towards the left, meant George was kind of the sole Republican candidate and became the nominee by default. And while his campaign would inevitably prove to be successful, it would give him a chance to mingle with constituents and work the media circuit, eventually priming his voter base for a grand return. Santos. last for at least a couple more years.
Democratic Congressman Tom Suozzi sees a victory on the horizon, banking on 90,000 absentee ballots. A newcomer to the political scene is singing a very different tune. The 32-year-old Queens native who works in finance credits his current lead in the vote, underestimated campaign which connected with voters.
Directly following his marginal loss in New York's 3rd District, George Santos was furious. Believing he had actually won the race, he began to allocate money and staff to a recount that never happened, along with accusing the county's GOP chairman of sabotaging his campaign because he's gay. According to intelligence, some of his own staff members were starting to worry about his mental health when he reportedly suggested finding a way to somehow throw out Democratic ballots as they came in. As serious as they culminated to attend an orientation for new congressional members even after it was abundantly clear he had lost, refusing to leave the room even as Suozzi was announced the winner. And if that wasn't enough, he then make his speech at the Stop and Steal rally one day ahead of the January 6th riots, arguing his election had been stolen from him, and just like Donald Trump.
They did to me what they did to Donald J. Trump. They stole my election.
Watching that rally from home was one of George's former roommates who couldn't help but notice the Burberry scarf he was wearing and looked
GGG, great go, increasing quarterly dividend 8.5% from 23.5 cents to 25 cents. GGG.
Donald J. Trump. They stole my election.
Watching that rally from home was one of George's former roommates who couldn't help but notice the Burberry scarf he was wearing and looked a little familiar.
While they were roommates, Greg Morey said Santos stole his Burberry scarf and later wore it during the rally ahead of January 6th.
I thought that
Those campaign finance problems I mentioned earlier, though, would absolutely lead to a second congressional nomination. A successful one, which means people actually look at this. For instance, we know he was spending last year on his campaign, racking up around $40,000 in expenses, buying his snapper's expensive clothes while still treating him like shit, apparently. He also had a tendency to spend $199 in restaurants and hotels, which is just under the legal threshold of $200 for expenses that campaigns are legally required to track. To give you an idea of how rare an expense like that would be, FEC data shows 90% of all votes in Senate races across the country did not report a single transaction between $199 and $199.99 in 2020. While the Santos campaign, on the other hand, reported 40. George's campaign accounted for roughly half of all expenses by all campaigns that cost exactly $199.99. A statistical improbability. Not to mention the countless donations from people who either don't exist or don't recall sending George any money. His cousin, for example, was dumbfounded by a pledge for $5,800 that he says he never made, adding to the overall mystique of how George managed to scrounge together a $700,000 sum he loaned his own campaign in 2022. But we'll explore all that and more in just a second. What's important right now is that he won, partly thanks to his district being redrawn 6 months before the election to include a much more Republican area. He was already running unopposed, which made him the Republican nominee, making it easy for him to beat the Democratic nominee Robert Zimmerman in a newly red region. This redrawing of the county lines was truly the best thing he could have asked for. It was a gift, but unfortunately, everything to come after this would be the exact opposite of a gift.
we picked him up pretty
when I was in Baruch. We were the number one volleyball.
Did you graduate from Baruch? Did you graduate from there?
Yeah.
So did I.
I did.
So did I.
Oh, very cool. So, great school, great institution, very liberal, but very good professors who don't show their bias, which is very interesting. But that's a whole other conversation. But it's funny that we went to play against Harvard, Yale, and we slayed them.
This one's pretty funny to me because he spoke at length about playing on this team, all while knowing damn well he never even attended the school.
And it's funny, I was the smallest guy, and I'm 6'2". Look, I sacrificed both my knees and got very nice knee replacements from HSS.
HMC American Honda, November sales up 33%.
In fact, he never even received a degree from higher education, despite claiming on the National Republican Committee's website that he once attended NYU, meaning he never attained an MBA and never scored a 710 on the GMAT, since he was also specifically liked to claim. Then there was the pet charity he left to cite on the campaign trail, founding Friends of Pets United in 2013. George spent the next 5 years saving 2,500 dogs and cats out of the goodness of his own heart, as his website claimed. Only as subsequent reports have found, this thing wasn't even registered as a charity in the states of New York or New Jersey. One of the only remnants of this thing that has been verified was a Facebook post promoting a fundraising event in 2017. But the beneficiary of that event claims to have never received the funds, that George kept making up excuses for why he didn't have the money. I mean, he was definitely facilitating the adoptions of these dogs, but where he was getting them from is a whole other story. Past associates of his he would brag about rescuing dogs off the streets himself, while this Amish dog breeder in Pennsylvania paints an entirely different picture. According to him, George showed up to his ranch looking to purchase some puppies, writing 9 checks totaling out to be about $15,000 that the farmer grew suspicious of. But by that point, George already had the dogs in his car, so he took the gamble, and shockingly, the checks bounced.
Have you gotten the money back?
No.
Have you heard from anybody?
No.
Do you believe this is the man who got your dogs, put them in the car, and took them away?
I feel it is. Based on my memory, I would say yes, it is.
3 days after this, George attended a pet adoption event in Staten Island. According to a former owner of that business, George had allegedly stolen puppies and would actually be charged for check fraud in the
Feds
state
Powell
of
says
Pennsylvania
been
in
surprised on the
2017.
upside this
only
year
way
with
he got
inflation
out of
coming
that
down
was by telling
meaningfully, but
prosecutors
growth
he
and
worked
jobs
for the
continuing.
SEC and
Powell said inflation's still well above target, but moving in the right direction. The data will tell the Fed if it has done enough and needs to do more. Powell said Fed does not need to be in a rush now. You're getting what you want again. S&P futures currently just off the highs now, 45.87 up 10.50. Dow futures up 138. Nasdaq down 26. ALRN upgraded to a buy at Ladenburg with a $9 price target.
Welcome back, and welcome to the last presentation of
November.
2021
Aileron Therapeutics, $2.35
Like I said, I have Charles
now.
Harris here
GSIW Garden Stage Limited IPO.
So impressed by the
Open now. Outstanding India whiskey.
breadth of information and just the many different perspectives that all the speakers have. And I think it proves that there's more than one way to be successful in the market. And that's really where this presentation kind of comes out of, is that I'm known as the guy at O'Neill that buys on pullbacks. And that doesn't happen too often amongst the portfolio managers. So really, I think it's important to trade in line with the personality.
On GSIW priced at $4.
If you're trying to be someone you're not, chances are the results are not going to turn out too well. And I've taught dozens of workshops to thousands of investments for IBD over the past 2 decades. And by and large, most of the attendees want to trade just like Bill, want to just be like Bill O'Neill. The truth is that Bill O'Neill was a very special individual. He had his own strengths and an incredible stock picking acumen, huge risk tolerance, very comfortable with large positions, and he just had an amazing intuition and decades of experience. So not everybody has that. You don't have to be just like Bill O'Neill to make a ton of money in the market. So I think that is, within our overall framework of Ken Slim and O'Neill methodology, you can kind of impress and put your own personality into that and play to your own strengths. And as you mentioned, I'm a PM at O'Neill Global Advisors. I've been with the firm since 1995, and I've been trading as a PM since the year 2000, which is when Bill brought me downstairs. And it was, I got to know Bill quite well. I've worked closely with him for many, many years, and we actually shared an office together back in those early days. So I really had the privilege from learning from a true master. And one thing, though, I never learned from Bill was how to buy on pullbacks. To be honest with you, he never really endorsed it. He never really understood it. But he did say to me once that if what you're doing is working for you, don't change it. So I've always been comfortable buying kind of in a contrary way and buying when people want to sell. And so that's my strength, and I kind of know who I am, and I know my own personality. rules apply to buying strength as well as buying weakness. The general market has to be in a defined uptrend. You should be in a bull market that's strong and trending and forgiving. If you're trying to buy stocks on weakness or stocks that are pulling back when the market is topping or trending down, that can be very dangerous because most stocks are not going to find support at those levels when the market is trending down. So number one, only do it in a strong uptrend. Two, not only must the general market be in a strong uptrend, but your stock also has to be in an uptrend. So yes, I'm buying weakness, but I'm buying weakness in the context of a rising stock. The way I define a rising stock or an uptrend is simply higher highs and higher lows supported by a rising 50-day moving average. If both of those things are occurring, then your stock is in a defined uptrend. You can take advantage of pullbacks to support levels. You should have conviction in the stock. Now, for me to have conviction in a stock, it needs to be fundamentally strong. It needs to have a compelling story and great prospects. Because when you're buying a stock when other people are selling, when you're buying, you're taking advantage of the weakness in the stock, you're kind of going against the grain, and it takes a lot of mental grit to go against the grain and buy when everybody else wants to sell. So you really need to know what you own and what you have and have a tremendous amount of conviction. And for me, the chart alone is never going to give me enough conviction to trade a stock. I will never buy a stock on the chart alone. It has to have something that I believe in, and it has to make sense to me why the stock would go up. The stock should have good liquidity relative to the size of your account. It should be fairly easy to buy and sell because oftentimes the stock will not hold support and you're going to have to reverse your position and get out. And this goes again for buying strength as well. So, I only trade stocks with sufficient liquidity based on the size of my account. And of course, it's gonna vary depending on if you're trading a 5-figure account or even a 6-figure account. Your liquidity needs aren't going to be what a 7 or 8-figure account requires or more. So I'm typically trading stocks that are institutional type stocks where institutions can come in and accumulate shares. And this goes hand in hand with institutional sponsorship, which is I and can swim. We're relying on the big money, on the smart money, to come in and support these stocks at these stress levels. So if a stock has no sponsorship or no good sponsorship that a proven ability, I'm probably not going to play those names as hard. So yeah, you want good liquidity and you want sponsorship. And if there is no sponsorship, there's a good chance there's no liquidity because those big funds require sufficient liquidity to build sizable positions. All right, so when we buy a stock, whether we're buying strength or buying a pullback, there are two objectives whenever we put on a trade, and that is, one, we want to increase the odds of winning, right? We want to put the odds in our favor that the trade will be profitable, and we always want to be able to define our loss in case we're wrong. So that's the risk management end of it. But both of these should occur. So the typical approach that we typically teach, and that is written in Bill's book and that many of the speakers have talked about, is buying strength, buying when a stock is moving above an area of resistance, and moving to new highs, and typically with a rising RS line.
GSIW resuming now.
Typical example would be, say here's Coupa Software last April, broke out of a cup with handle base, and we would buy it breaking out of this handle here on an increase in volume. Again, buying at this pivot point is increasing our odds of winning because it's now cleared all the overhead supply.
Share is $5.95 now, $6 now.
And we can easily define our risk as the low of maybe the intraday low of this breakout. If our
IPO for today.
expectation, of course, is that the stock
$2.15
will
at the
continue
high.
to move up. But if it
GSIW.
doesn't and moves down, we know we can sell the stock and cut our loss. And so in this case, the stock continued to move up and then consolidated for a few weeks and then began to break above resistance here. So we can pyramid into our position here on strength as it clears the resistance at the highs. And the stock continues to move up. Again, consolidates, gets support at the 50-day moving average, and breaks out again, pyramid again, and then the stock finally corrects and breaks the 50-day moving average decisively on heavy volume, and you would unwind your position and move on. So that is a typical way that we trade, and it's great. It works great in a strong bull market. But the disadvantages of it are that you're always buying at new highs. So our cost basis on a relative basis relative to buying maybe on a pullback is going to be higher. And you're always competing with everyone else to accumulate shares at these obvious buy points when a stock moves above resistance. You know, every one of us, I'm sure, puts alerts pretty much at the same area on a chart when we want to be reminded that a stock is about to break out into new high ground. So to me, this is the obvious place to buy. We're competing with everyone else to accumulate shares, and the obvious doesn't always work so well in the market. I would say definitely this year, and I would say even for the past 5 to 6 years, buying strength has not been the greatest strategy. I've seen more and more breakout failures, breakout shakeouts, and fakeouts become more and more common. And so always buying kind of the obvious way is. So the question is there an alternative way that will eliminate some of those disadvantages, but it still allow you to fulfill those two objectives of increasing our odds of winning on the trade and defining our risk? And my answer to that is yes. An alternative approach would be to buy pullbacks. You want to be initiating a position or adding to a position on a pullback. And typically I'm adding a position. I don't initiate positions as often on a pullback, but if I missed a stock, I will take advantage and initiate there. The advantages of buying on pullbacks is that you're going to get a lower cost basis relative to buying at new highs.
Powell said Fed has to restore price stability as the bedrock of the economy.
The supply-demand balance is moving in your favor. You know, everybody wants to sell, and you can, kind of stand there and soak up those shares easily. So when we're doing this, we're taking advantage of the fearful sellers who are getting shaken out of a stock at a support level. When can we buy on a pullback? Well, you can do it prior to the breakout while a stock is building a base along the right side, or you can buy it.
GSIW shares were halted again at $6.57 at the high of the day. Gulf Sandy Indian Whiskey.
Moving averages, or the top of prior areas of resistance, and we can buy that way.
Shares up 64% now high.
Buying a pullback
GSIW.
prior to the breakout. So we're buying here when a stock is building the right side of the base. When we buy in this way, it's always best to wait for an upside reversal before you buy. So that's really your indicator of buying a this case here, we get another upside reversal on a slight increase in volume. And we can draw in the line up here where it's your traditional pivot point, and we also know where we're going to cut this portion of the stock if it moves back down. So now we already have 2 buys in the stock, and the stock hasn't even broken out yet. And if the stock does break out, we're going to add to it there as well. And the stock does break out, and so we would add there. And so we have 3 buys on the, 2 prior to the breakout, 1 on the breakout.
Powell said will be a while before it's understood how AI should be regulated, how to capture benefits and avoid the
And the
risks.
stock moves up, consolidates, and you'll notice that during this consolidation, we have 3 pullbacks. Again, supported by the 21-day moving average, which I'm going to talk about in a bit, but that's the magenta line on the chart. And so you can take advantage of these pullbacks to the 21-day moving average on these upside reversals. And then if you like, you can also add a pyramid into strength as it's clearing these short lines of resistance. So that is kind of how I would normally trade a stock. I use a combination of buying at pivots and buying on the pullbacks. I buy each successive breakout above resistance, the pyramid, and each successive upside reversal. Looking at another example, this is Lululemon. You can see it had a huge 51%, 52% correction during the COVID crash. Your position high. But after the breakout, once the stock is actually in a defined uptrend, there's going to be additional areas of support where you can define your risk. So it's not absolutely necessary to wait for an upside reversal in those cases. So the moving average lines that I pay attention to